Picture this scene. Everyone's favorite starship engineer giving a tour of the Starship Enterprise to some of the 20th century's most famous historical figures, Albert Einstein, John F. Kennedy, and Adolf Hitler. That sounds crazy, right? Well, it could have been Star Trek the Motion Picture, folks. And that's today's topic on Lost Trek. Greetings, ekomomai, and nuhne to my fellow Star Trek fans. Welcome to Lost Treks, the YouTube series which examines actual Star Trek projects, movies, and episodes that were either pitched to Paramount or were in various stages of production before they lost their way to the audience. Do you have an idea for a Lost Trek? Let me know in the comments below. Next to space itself, abandoned Star Trek projects are the other final frontier. Let me know what you'd like. We'll plot a course and we'll go there. Also, if you want to continue receiving Star Trek public history, commentary, and psychological profiles, please feel free to like and subscribe. Also, if you have any areas for improvement, please let me know. Today's Lost Trek video deals with a pitch for Star Trek the Motion Picture that is officially titled Star Trek the Movie Treatment 2. But I like to call it Star Trek Scotty Wrecks the Universe. And for us to do that, we're going to transport ourselves back in time to 1975. Let's set the incursion drive and engage. So let's get our bearings here in this quasi-dark age of Star Trek history. Star Trek, the original series, has been off the air for 6 years. Star Trek, the animated series, is finishing up. Feel free to cheer or lament. Either way works. IDIC, folks. I don't judge. Finally, Star Trek conventions are going viral in a pre-2020 sort of way. It's beautiful. Paramount is openly exploring the possibility of creating a live-action Star Trek project. So as you can see here in this title card, Roddenberry started typing up feverishly several different stories, several different scripts that could have been Star Trek the movie. Now, after The God Thing was rejected by Paramount, Roddenberry teamed up with his longtime researcher and handyman, John Povil, and they wrote 2 proposals for Paramount to consider as a motion picture. Proposal 2, or Treatment 2, involved the apparent and tragic destruction of the USS Enterprise as it collided with a black hole. Or did it? Let's discuss. So, first act of this movie. The Enterprise collides with a black hole and appears to have disappeared. The only survivors are Scotty and Mr. Spock, who are able to follow the Enterprise in their own individual research vessels. The next part of this pitch gets a little sketchy, but it involves only Scotty using his support craft to create a time warp in hopes of reliving the accident involving the black hole and saving his beloved shipmates and, more importantly, his beloved ship. However, as things tend to be, not everything goes as planned. Instead of materializing moments before the Enterprise is destroyed by the black hole, Scotty materializes in the 1930s, on Earth, in his spacecraft, and sets, in the words of John Povil, the co-writer of this pitch, a snowball effect resulting in World War II being averted, Kennedy not being assassinated, and Earth quickly transforming itself into a utopia paradise. Sounds great, except for one little problem. By the end of the movie's second act, we discover that the Enterprise was not destroyed by the inciting incident and was instead rejuvenated by some sort of glowing interstellar goo and sent back in time to Scotty's alternate dimension. This is where the final conflict of the plot comes into focus. Scotty's incursion has caused too much damage to the timeline. For reasons that are not fully explicit in this pitch, Kirk must actively try to undermine the budding utopia Scotty accidentally created on Earth. He brings up all of Earth's leaders and has a conference on the bridge of the Enterprise. This results in a climactic argument between Winston Churchill, John F. Kennedy, Albert Einstein, and Hitler. Finally, when all the other world leaders leave, Kirk convinces John F. Kennedy that they need to start World War III because it is for the quote-unquote greater good. The calamity of World War III is enough to put things back on track, and the Enterprise and Scotty return to a mostly restored 23rd century. Except they didn't, because Paramount killed the proposal on arrival. They absolutely hated the pitch. Ordinarily, that would be where the story ends. But in this video series, we have some fun with the space-time continuum as we go across the multiverse. So, in addition to greenlighting this project, I'm going to create my own version of this Lost Trek by filling in some of the gaps left in this pitch's narrative. I also invite you to do the same. Together we will hashtag finish the pitch. What you see here are all the story elements historically documented in our timeline. Those details cannot change. What we can change, what we can add, are little pieces of information to link the events in the pitch into a coherent narrative, thereby fleshing out a pitch into a complete story. I'm going to show you what my version of the story is, and I'm really excited to see in the comments below what you would do and what your finished pitch would be for this movie. So, here's my story. The inciting incident is exactly as it is in the Poville pitch. The Enterprise does collapse into the black hole. At the end of the first act, Scotty and Spock come to an understanding. Scotty is going to try to save the Enterprise first with his time warp equation. Spock decides to wait and see the results of Scotty's experiment. And in Spock's words, "We can double our efficiency if one travels through at a time. That way one can correct the other's mistake. It is only logical." It's my attempt at Nimoy there. Forgive my blasphemy. Spock tries his calculation and accidentally crash lands his research vessel in the Weimar pre-Nazi era republic. The 23rd century technology on board the research vessel ends up curing humanity's ills. Many of the events that led to World War II, namely massive economic depression and hunger, are solved because of the technology found on Scotty's support craft. Replicator technology eliminates hunger. The medical kits on board essentially cure all diseases on Earth. And when he is asked where he came from, Scotty accidentally spreads the gospel of the Federation, infinite diversity through infinite combinations, causing humanity to start to unify, creating the utopia that Poville mentions in his pitch. From there, everything goes by the Poville pitch until the Enterprise arrives. Then Kirk explains that Scotty must stop and reverse his contamination of the timeline, not necessarily because it's a Prime Directive violation, but because the entire fate of the universe depends on it. What Scotty is doing is establishing a predestination paradox. By using a fixed timeline approach to time travel, which is the only way you can make the narrative thrust of this movie work. Personally, I prefer the multiverse theory to time travel. If humanity continues on its present course, as you can see in this diagram, the 23rd century that will result from Scotty's contamination will be too different than the 23rd century from which Scotty originated. Therefore, the equivalent of Montgomery Scott in that timeline will not travel back in time, effectively undermining the foundation of the reality causing the universe to explode. Kirk then facilitates the meeting between Churchill, Hitler, and John F. Kennedy. The same kind of explosive argument ensues, but this time Spock arrives in the nick of time and gives Hitler a Vulcan nerve pinch. In the third act, Spock lays out his solution to this potentially universe-ending dilemma. With the proper manipulation of the warp engines, both the Enterprise and the support vessel can create an anti-time field, thus rewinding time until the exact moment before the Enterprise entered the black hole. There's just one problem. The research vessel is heavily guarded in a research warehouse where every country in the world has access. Violating that agreement is an act of war. Therefore, JFK helps Scotty and Mr. Spock break into the warehouse that's holding his vessel. This violates the international treaty and sets up a ticking clock scenario. Spock and Scotty must activate the temporal inversion field before the bombs completely leveled the warehouse and everything else on planet Earth. Fortunately, in the nick of time, Scotty's vessel and the Enterprise activate their temporal inversion fields in time, rewinding them all the way back to instants before the Enterprise fell into the black hole at the beginning of the movie. Star Trek Scotty Wrecks the Universe then ends with Spock, McCoy, Kirk, and Scotty talking about fate and the nature of time. And while I do dabble in creative writing as a hobby, I also do historical interpretation for a living. And as an historian, I can confidently say that Star Trek Scotty Wrecks the Universe is a franchise killer. Kills the franchise. Now, folks, I'm going to be the first to say that Star Trek the Motion Picture could have used some spice. It is as bland can be, and I'm pretty sure in some psychiatric ward somewhere, they play Star Trek the Motion Picture for insomniacs who don't respond to strong drugs. It's bad. However, action is a little bit like spice in food. If it's too bland, a little bit of action goes a long way. Take a look at Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan for reference there. The problem is you don't want to make something too spicy, because the spicier you make something, the more you alienate its palatability for the general audience, both in terms of cuisine and in terms of storytelling. And I can tell you, Star Trek Scotty Wrecks the Universe is the unbelievably spicy, screaming sphincter, have to sign a waiver before even sampling kind of spicy. And the reason why this is a franchise killer, folks, is this sort of movie could be forgivable if it were the second, third, or fifth episode in a series. But if this were supposed to kick off the now 13 installment movie series that Star Trek is, it is profoundly shaky ground. This is a zany mess, folks. This is a terribly zany mess. And if this set the standard for what a Star Trek movie could be, there would not be sequels. As mind-numbingly slow as it is, Star Trek the Motion Picture had enough hard science fiction credibility to it on which you could build more accessible stories. Star Trek Scotty Wrecks the Universe is nothing more than schlock. But what do you think? What would be your spin on Scotty Wrecks the Universe? Please let me know in the comments below. And remember, if you like what you see, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. And with that said, live long and prosper, e malama pono, and see you next time. Hello again. Mahalo nui loa for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to learn more about this video's topic, I have left my sources in the description below. Feel free to check them out. And while you're down there, feel free to click the like button and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Finally, if you'd like to leave your thoughts in the comments below, maybe your Lost Trek pitches, ideas for new videos, or areas through which I can improve, I'm always looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that, and I'm looking forward to reading them. With that said, live long and prosper, e malama pono, and see you next time.